So I think starting off, why do we have this panel today? Is we've worked in gender and politics in the field of this for the last 3 years, and have realized that although like men and women have reached a place where they vote at a similar rate, and there's similar number of voters, we still see that women kind of lag behind when it comes to important participatory attitudes and political interest and discussions. And inequalities in kind of political involvement also eventually undermine the quality of deliberation, how we represent, have the leadership representation, and also the legitimacy of the democratic processes itself. So these are, I think, like this is something that we've drawn from research, but for people like you who've all been in practice, especially the panelists today, I think the focus today would be to understand how these things translate into politics, how do we have these gender norms which affect political engagement, political participation, but at the same time, how can we learn from some of the experiences all of you have had to challenge these gender norms, to navigate through these gender norms. And some of you have also worked with a lot of political leaders as against being one yourself as well. So I think like a mix of your own journey and also from your observation of the people you've worked with. Some of our questions are kind of they revolve around this. This is a recorded session, so I believe there might be some comments that might come from Facebook as well. And we could, if we are left with some time, we could take a few questions at the end. I'd request people in the room as well to note down their questions, and we could take them at the end. I'll start with the introductions now then. Please pardon me starting off with this. Please pardon me if I mispronounce the names, and please correct me as well. So I'll start with Ms. Jena Karim, who's a senior democracy and governance advisor. She has been a civil society and a democracy practitioner for the last 20 years, working on access to democratic processes, elections, electoral reforms in conflict and post-conflict states. Most recently, she worked on increasing access to justice for women and marginalized communities, and civil society advocacy development in Afghanistan. In addition to Afghanistan, Jena has also worked in and on Bangladesh, Pakistan, Myanmar, Sudan, Tajikistan, and other contexts in transition. Jena published a book on polarization and political cultures, and has written and presented on civil societies, access to justice, and all the other works I'd mentioned before, political transition for academic and policy audiences. And I think this would her background would really help us understand the kind of practice to research and research to practice kind of differences. I'd just like to stop for a second and check with the students in the room. I've been made the admin for this, the host for the Zoom meeting. I hope there's somebody else as well, because I'm seeing a lot of requests to join. If somebody could please have a look at that. All right, coming back and moving on to our next panelist, Honorable Dil Maya Rai. She's a member of Parliament. I hope, ma'am, your technical glitches are solved and you could hear us. She's a member of Parliament in the National Assembly of Bhutan. She has chaired the Public Accounts Committee and served as Deputy Chair and member of various parliamentary committees. She has served as a social development specialist with both the Asian Development Bank and UN Bhutan. And we're hoping to learn from her own career journey how she had kind of moved around these gender norms and learn more about her experiences alongside the gender norms that exist in Bhutan and otherwise as well. Ms. Hima Bista is the executive director.
Okay.
Can you hear us, Ms. Dilmaya Rai?
Yes, I just left meeting from the desktop thing so that there's no echo. Now I'm coming online with through what you call the phone. Can you hear me now? Oh, there is still echo.
I think you'll have to mute from one of your
I have
devices.
muted. I will leave meeting in the desktop.
Okay.
Yeah, is that clear now? Is that clear now?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Can you see
better.
me?
Yes.
It's not too dark. Okay. Thanks. I think now
so?
I hope this will not be disrupted. But I can't see you all as like I used to see in the desktop. In the desktop, like I could see everybody else, but here in the phone, I can see only you, Sugandha, and myself. So who's going to? Yes, Sugandha, please go ahead.
Ma'am, I was just doing your introduction, and on just that, I was going to introduce our third panelists as well. Ms. Hima Bista. She's an executive director of Women Lead Nepal, an organization empowering young Nepali women to become future leaders. And with 22 years of experience in the development sectors, including 6 years as the head of human resources at the DFID Nepal, Hima's passion and leadership has hugely contributed in moving towards an inclusive society. And we wish to learn from all the three panelists about their experiences and observations when it comes to gender norms and political leadership. I would start with the first question and jump into that. Also, I think like before I start, sorry, I please let me know if you'd prefer your names spoken otherwise. If I'm pronouncing it wrongly, please feel free to correct me. Okay, so I'll jump into the first question, and let's start with understanding how did gender norms kind of shape the opportunities of getting into political leadership, of having the access to political leadership. And what has your observations been? Maybe you could speak about your own experiences or experiences of others that you might have learned in your career so far. Starting with, I think, Madam Dilmaya Rai, if you could start, and then we could move around other panelists as well.
Thank you, Sugandha, for the kind introduction. And without much ado, because I guess we've lost some time trying to get in. To answer your first question, personally, myself, when I decided to run for office, the gender norms was not much of a hindrance to get into the race. Rather, I was pretty surprised in the patriarchal society from the section of the country that I come from. They were very forthcoming in supporting my candidature, and somehow I did not feel the gender norms as a hindrance. And then everything over, but it was much later that I started feeling it little by little. When you start working, not per se during the campaign time, in order to represent people. Somehow people were so forthcoming. That's how I could manage to get their support and win almost landslide in both the rounds of primary and general round elections. But only in the workplace that I started feeling the pinch down the line, I would say. So I really do not know if it's gender norms as a blanket what you call practice or tradition that really impedes women's representation, but rather I guess it's more of individual mindset, or perhaps what do you call the colleagues, pardon me, male colleagues participating here. I think some male colleagues still carry this baggage of not being able to work in the equal platform with women around. So that's where the norms things start coming in. Otherwise, I'm happy to say that I was happy to see that even my society has now come far in accepting women leaders and welcoming it. But at the same time, it's quite sad to see, rather it's the educated lot that is not very accepting. Thank you. So that much for the first question. Do I also cover other questions, Sugandha, or? I cannot hear you. I think you're muted, Sugandha.
Sorry. I think I'd also love to hear from the other panelists, and then also come back maybe a few more questions.
Thank you.
I can of course make it shorter if anyone has time foundations, but I'd love to hear from starting off with Hima, your experiences working with other women leaders. And I think it's also very interesting to know how gender norms could affect both positively and negatively experiences and opportunities one gets. And speaking specifically about political opportunities, how would you see it has kind of in your work, and it's kind of affected, and it could be as simple as understanding the perception of what a woman should be doing in the society, how should women behave in public spaces, etc. And how has that kind of impacted political opportunities? Over to you, Hima.
Thanks, Sugandha. Gender norms definitely plays a huge role in every sphere of the society. It sets a tone, and culturally, we are a society that has already, because of the patriarchal nature, it has set a tone that there's a certain things that how a woman or a girl should behave and not behave, and how a man or a boy can or should behave, and that kind of perception and that tone can be seen and felt in every step of the way. Be it in the public commission, be it in the workspace, and definitely in the political platform. And if we look at the history of, like in the context of South Asian context, and definitely Nepal is no exception, we've seen the huge nepotism that that the gender norm has played a part in nepotism in the political context. And I'll give an example. It's the tone of the father has been a political player, and that political hierarchy, or you call it sort of like that the lineage, political lineage that needs to be handed over to the generation next. And by the generation next, you don't mean to the outside world, but that has to be within that same family or the friends, and that's so prevalent in the political parties. And how that's been going on is, if you look at the recent, Nepal just went through the election in November, and you can see that is, the tone that was set, and that has been set for the past, decades. We had only 9 women who were directly elected in the parliament. And that is, and only because our constitution says that we have to have 33% representation in the parliament, and we just made it to 33%. Not a number less or not a number more, so it has become such a tokenistic. And that tokenism comes from, not only in politics, but that comes from in every step, in everything that we do. And so that's something that, I work with very young, very promising young girls and women, or female identifying, but you can see that, we come with that baggage. And the first step for us is always to unpack that, and to leave that behind is such a, it's such a effort that, half of our time is just spent on, getting rid or trying to overcome that baggage. And by the time we do that, we become so tired, and we lose, for some of us, our productive years. And for some individuals, you just have to rethink. So that's I see it as a challenge, gender norms as a challenge in what we do right now. Yeah.
Jena, I would love to learn from, I think it would be great. Your experience have kind of been across countries and across cultures, therefore. I think it would be really interesting to also understand from you and your work about about people who've challenged gender norms and the ways that they might have overcome. And this is my next question. I think we could go around the table and understand if they'd like to share any experiences, instances where they've seen these gender norms being challenged, perhaps being overcome by some of the women leaders. Yeah, over to you, Jena.
Thank you. I think a lot of what the other esteemed panelists have said, it actually is so similar to experiences across countries, across continents, across different types of communities. And what I'm hearing from everyone, and also what my own experience is women have one thing that gender norms, one of the negative things, and then there are positive things also, as you rightly mentioned, is women have a credibility issue. Everyone is adjusting to equality, and nobody knows how to navigate it. Men were not trained. They were trained in patriarchy. Even in younger generations, only now we're starting to see things change. In terms of how men are raised, the notions of masculinity and what is masculinity relative to, women and female identifying genders, and what is it that how should men act relative to women, and how should women act relative to men? So that sort of back and forth is something so many people are evaluating, particularly in politics and governance. How are deals being made if women can't be in public spaces after, let's say a certain hour, where, men would go into a back room and hammer out legislation. And if women, have to go home to their families because that's what society expects, or that's what their circumstances demand. Those are all kinds of issues that require evolution on all parts in terms of how everyone does business. One of the things I've seen people who have challenged and overcome, I don't know, overcome, I hope one day to fully actualize that word, but certainly who are getting there. Women who've done that, in my experience, I've met, and worked with civil society leaders who, they approached it several different ways. They built constituencies that no one else had reached, but that needed to be served, right? Because there was this notion that women only serve, women's issues. And that was something that these civil society activists said, no, we don't only, gender issues are one part of our work, but we also want to focus on the impacts of climate change on business, right? Which is something that was interesting to a lot of men, right? The economic impacts of climate change, for example. So they built constituencies that were diverse and that were rooted in issues. So being issue-based was one way that these civil society activists managed to overcome gender norms and have credibility. The other thing is they became experts. So, very often they didn't give anyone a choice, men and women. They didn't give anybody a choice but to listen to them, because they were the experts in certain policy areas. So everyone knew to go to them. So their gender sort of was obviously part of their identity, but it didn't mean it was central, solely central to their politics. It was one aspect. And creating that expertise enhanced credibility. And so that's, as the world adjusts to equality, those were two kind of big examples, and these were in different countries. The civil society activists, these were in Afghanistan, and a lot of the political activists who focused on really issue-based expertise were in Burma. And so it was, different contexts, different notions of equality, and different engagements and different relationships of women in public spaces, which I think is an excellent point that you've raised. So those are just some ways, constituency and building expertise that these women managed to overcome gender norms in a negative way. You're muted.
Yeah, Sugandha is muted, I think.
Sorry about that. But thank you very much for sharing this with us. And I'm looking at Madam Dilmaya and thinking that as a parliamentarian herself, like if she would have come across such challenges, maybe on a more day-to-day basis, or it could also we spoke about different cultures, so it could also be meeting or engaging internationally, and your participation with other countries and other parliamentarians and so on and so forth. Like, would you like to share some of the instances, or even an instance where you'd see some of these norms being challenged, and possibly overcome by women parliamentarians, fellow women parliamentarians in Bhutan or outside?
Thank you, Sugandha. Before I go to answer your, the current question, I would like to put a small disclaimer on the first one that I said the other time, that gender norms did not kind of impede my taking the opportunity to run for office. But overall, in the society, I think we do have it. Going by the percent of representation, women representation in the parliament, only about 15%. And same in the local governments. No, I mean, in all offices where the positions are held through election, then the percentage is really low. No, only in those offices, even in those offices which they have to, achieve through merit, by being capable. Even in those offices, we have very less women representation in our country. I mean, as the ladder goes up, the women representation gets lesser. So that shows we do have gender norms impeding women's representation, in the sense our society is also, so much into women's position still at home. Women should still be looking after kids and taking care of home affairs. So those things still have shaped, I think, our representation, in as much as we are almost 50-50 in terms of population proportion between male and female. It's men are only slightly higher than females in our country, yet going by the percentage of representation in higher offices, we are really less, 15-20%, at the most 30. So that shows we do have gender norms playing a huge role in impeding women's representation. And on being able to challenge the gender norms in workplaces, I guess somewhat like that, right? And yes, in the everyday work, I don't know where to begin from, because I, going by my education background and some exposure to international, cultures and friends and organizations before becoming a parliamentarian. Because I had that type of exposure, I was expecting, I guess, more or less the same scenario in the parliament too, with the colleagues, but then with time, I realized majority of my colleagues, fortunately, or I don't know, unfortunately, do not seem to have the same exposure, and quite sad to realize that what you call the level of openness is different. Even the thought processing and the way we think is different, and sometimes I mean, for us, for women like you and me, if we smile, if we talk frankly, for us, it just ends there. That's it. I mean, we just want to work in a friendly work environment. But male colleagues seem to interpret that differently, especially those male colleagues who do not have much exposure in other cultures. I guess for them, if you talk frankly, or if you're quite friendly, it's like giving another signal. So this is one type of challenge I faced in the last 4 years. Not always, but sometimes with few colleagues here and there, and then I would get some sort of culture shock in my own home ground, which I wouldn't get abroad. But here, coming to the home ground with your own countrymen, you get the shock that, oh, so they are not very recipient to your being open and what you call cordial. Even in the work relations, they tend to interpret differently. So how I overcame such a scenario, I was quite open, to be very honest. I would just share how I feel. I would write, even in the group chats, I would take the courage to write and express my feelings that I'm not comfortable, men interpreting it differently. And I would also share with them or request them not to pass certain comments that hurt a woman's sentiments, a lady's sentiments, or make women colleagues uncomfortable. And of course, initially I was taken, to be bitchy, they would not like it. They would react very quite what you call harsh, I would say. But with time, they started accepting. They started changing. So in a way, I feel quite satisfied. I feel a great sense of satisfaction. 4 years down the line, I have managed to change few male colleagues' way of working with women who what you call freely or openly express their what you call discomfort in the way they behave in the workplace. So in a way, I guess that even though it may be very small step or small achievement, but being able to change a few male colleagues mentality 4 years down the line, I think is a big achievement in its own ways in a small society like mine. So that's how I tried my best to change, and a few of my other female colleagues also try. But then I guess it really needs a lot of experience and age and, what to say, courage also to be able to freely express, those things that you're comfortable with and those that you're not. And with time, I think male colleagues, fortunately, they have been very accepting, and that itself is a change I saw, and it's a positive change, I would say. Thank you. I hope I touched all your points. If not, please throw the questions later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. I think, thank you for sharing that with us. And it's really, I'd say it's really inspiring to hear that. And I'm sitting here surprised, thinking that it's as simple as communication. But being in as a working woman myself, I've realized how incredibly difficult it could be. Like, oh, it's my colleagues, and how do we bring that up? And these are the colleagues I might have Also have, you know, when there are blurred lines between having colleagues and friends, and they're almost your friends, and then they say something which is extremely sexist, misogynistic, or maybe it's dark humor now, which is beyond my own understanding. And then how do we raise that, and having the courage to say it, and simply by communication changing mindsets. I think those are some very strong points, as even though they sound very simple to do. I know it could take like a lot, especially when women are taught not to speak so much and not to stand up, and not to be critical, and that again leads to shaping of some other sorts of perception about certain kind of women, so on and so forth. And by doing so, you also been a role model to other colleagues, and possibly kind of giving them the space or inspiration to step up and be critical about certain things. I'm also thinking about Hima's work so far in empowering young women, and how in those groups of women that you have worked with, you might have also come across some of such young women who come from either families or friends or partners who might have certain expectations from them, and that might have led to some sort of um, impact on the political opportunities in their careers, and how they might have dealt with it, faced it. Yeah. Over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, you know, we work with, we have a fellowship that's, you know, that's Young Women's Political Leadership Fellowship, and that runs for 11 months. And we work with young women, girls from age 18 to 25. And they come to our course, and so we engage with them, and they come with some of them do have some sort of political you know, understanding, but they come from, you know, various backgrounds, from law to public health to business in administration. So what we try to do is, you know, we don't necessarily, you know, expect all of them to be engaged in active politics, but at least our, you know, expectation is that, you know, 10 years down the line, at least, you know, they either become a political activist or a political writer or critique, or, you know, or hopefully maybe, you know, engage in, you know, local politics, or, you know, in overall, you know, the country's political, mainstream politics. And one of the things that we really focus is on in advocacy. Advocacy is a major part of this fellowship. And you know, I myself, I'm an activist also. And one of the things that we do is, you know, the belief that, you know, and because we are a very young democratic nation, you know, this belief that, you know, from the street to the parliament, you know, this notion that, you know, if things are not being done at the center, then let's take it out from the street and let's take it up right there, so that at least the issue gets, you know, gets its attention. And we try to discuss that with these amazing young women. And something that we realized is that these women come from you know, all over Nepal. It's not only focused in the capital, though the courses run in Kathmandu, they come from all over Nepal. And something we've realized and we've seen over the years is, you know, the gender norms that's being played. I mean, you know, you're set with, you know, certain the brought up, you know, of initially the hesitancy to go out on the street and to advocate, because, you know, advocacy means you're right out there, you're exposed, you will get attention from the media, from the security forces, because the idea of advocacy is that, you know, to make sure that the parliamentarians are, you know, watching you, they're picking up something from the street, and hopefully that, you know, that gets, you know, something written in the policy level. And, you know, some of these young individuals are right up there. Yes, let's go, that, that young blood, let's do it. We have to, let's do it. And then we have a critical mass who's, because there is what's next, what will happen, because boys can go out. It's okay if they get taken by the security forces. If the police comes and something happens on the street, that's okay. But what about girls? What is going to happen? If your picture is out in the newspaper tomorrow, or if the media captures, what happens? And these kind of, it's difficult. It's difficult to get out from that. From that. From it's scary. It's scary also. I think I am okay. I think I was lost for a while, right? And one example that I can give you is certainly, even for someone like me. I mean, in 2021, when we had, the COVID and lockdown and everything, and so we had Women's March, and it was supposed to be a big march. We were very unhappy with the political process, with the prime minister, with everything, and Nepal being a country who had the first female president, and there were a lot of things that was going wrong. So we said, we had to do a march, and I was supposed to be one of the speakers. The only thing that I knew at that time was that I had to make a speech that is going to get attention. But at that moment, I didn't know what speech. So we all said, okay, let's march. And we were right near where there's the center in the capital, the center, right near where there's a security cordon area. And it was my turn to give a speech. And I climbed that podium. And the only thing that I could see was a sea of people. And, but you get that energy. And so I just made a speech. And it just came. You started talking because you're enraged. You're talking about, there's lack of, there's citizenship issue. There is, gender-based violence is on the rise. There is no one is taking responsibility, no accountability, transparency, everything that could go wrong in terms of, girls, women, female identifying, everything was going wrong. So there's one line I said, because the election was coming, and there was one line I said, pointing to the Prime Minister's office. And I said right before, when I said that sentence, I said in Nepali, I said that don't, go and concentrate on the words. Because I was going to say it in English. I said in Nepali, don't go with the words. And I just said in English, my vagina will vote you out. I said that, I said that, I walked out, and you can imagine what happened, because it was like the trolling went on and on forever. That was least of my concern. What happened was that, how could a woman go up on the podium and use the word? And it was like, is that what you got out of that entire thing? Because a woman, a girl, you are not supposed to use that word, that language. And it that just tells you, is like, it just is like, it gives you, is like, what? So that's something that, but advocacy doesn't stop. And we've been, saying that, no, that's just, is like, okay, break the glass ceiling right there, and we continue. And that's what we do with, that our amazing young individuals. And they've just been, okay, that's it. Because no matter what you do, what you say is like, unless we, hit these certain do's and don'ts, especially the don'ts, we are not going to get anyone, up there. And Madam Honorable Dilma is right there, and I'm sure you can relate that, as a parliamentarian, it's such a difficult job, but then we have to say it out from the street, and these are the young voices who are challenging right now, whether it's in Nepal or elsewhere. Yeah,
because I have locked from the phone, my constituents keep calling and then it gets disrupted time and again. Even now this is the call, I'm just trying to entertain it. It's very interesting to listen to you, Madam. Madam Hima. It's very interesting. I was just
Thank you, ma'am.
trying to picture you that to the Prime Minister and how he could have reacted. No, that was really great of you.
Thank
Over
you.
to
I think
Sugandha.
I agree. I agree. I think it's such an inspiring anecdote, and I think it definitely leaves
is.
us with some giggles because I think we are in a position we can giggle at this point and feel inspired
Yeah.
and still laugh. But I could imagine how much of heavy weight it could be being at that place at that time and speaking out
True.
loud and so
True.
kudos to that. And I think you touched upon something which, although was not in the script, but I think it's really important to discuss as well, about media shaping some of the perceptions. And I think like when you are a good woman, media would take you as a role model, and there will definitely be talks about how you're a good mother, maybe, or a good wife, or a good daughter, and things like that. And on the other side, when you are unruly and you are more too much confident, quote unquote, and so on and so forth, there's extreme criticism and even trolling in cases. I'd love to hear from the panelists today in terms of how do they think media has contributed to what extent, and maybe draw from some of the examples that you might have seen alongside your work in picking up these things and shaping what a political leadership should look like, what a political activist should look like, and things like that.
Mhm. Could I go first?
Please,
So,
please,
Sugandha, on the media, shaping, media framing the picture of especially the politicians in any society. I don't know, I will not generalize on all other countries, but at least from mine, what I saw is, media in the sense nowadays, even the netizens, the social media users, no citizens per se, who can scribble something in the Facebook and write some nasty stuffs about politicians, that really shapes the general masses, what you call outlook towards the elected leaders, no? And when some frustrated netizens keep writing nasty stuffs about the leaders they themselves have elected, then the general, what you call rural population, especially those who are not so literate, they just go by, what the half literates, say or write. And that really influences, I think, the image of the leaders and, especially the politicians, because looks like now, what you call, in in many instances or in many countries, the image of leaders really go by what the media portrays, and when the media is not very friendly, then the electorates, even if they may have voted somebody of their liking, of somebody that they really favored or loved and respected, with time, because of the influence of the media, even their perceptions, I have seen change over time. And that's pretty sad, especially in a context like mine, for example. Elected leaders, especially parliamentarians, we do not have, I would say, we just don't have any access to budgetary allocations. Allocations in the sense passing the budget from the parliament, of course we do. But moment it comes to, what we call implementing the activities and start, what you call that, distributing to different agencies and how it should be utilized and where it should be utilized and how much to be utilized. Parliaments just don't have any role in that. But then when the netizens, keep writing and the media keeps saying that, so and so, it's the government, it's the parliament, and it's your leader, is that, is this, it's pretty sad. It's very disheartening over time to see even the innocent electorates start believing, the media, and start, what you call, I don't know if that's the right terminology. Here we use the term called bad mouthing, talking at your back, bad about their own that they elected. So it's quite sad. And how much ever hard the leaders, especially the executives, the cabinet, I would say, cabinet ministers who are the what you call at the helm of the government activities, even when they try to explain, clarify stuffs through one after another press releases, I think the opinion formed by the media becomes so strong that nothing sort of undoes. It cannot undo the image that's already formed by the media. So media really does play a big role in portraying the image of the government, of the leaders they elected, and overall even the corruption or the cleanliness of any governance in that matter. So to my personal conclusion, I would say any elected government in that matter, in their first tenure, first 6 months, I would say, I think they should really work hard to do orientation or advocacy in media first, educate the media first, and then start rolling out their activities, so that whatever they do, if it is with the best of the interests, at least that should get reflected, that should get appreciated. And not being elected myself, and because I'm in the ruling party, my colleagues in the cabinet, the ministers, I know, majority of them, I will not say 100% because I may be wrong, but I would say majority, 90% plus of the cabinet ministers do things with their very, earnest interests for the good of the people. But I've seen the media and the people always finger pointing. That's very sad. It's really disheartening. So I guess, and now because it's the 5th year, it could be too late for us to, redo things. But having learned some lessons, in case the same party comes to power the next time around, I would urge my cabinet colleagues, friends in the cabinet, to do the education with the media before rolling out any of the government activities. So yeah, I think media is very powerful, arm of the government. So how it how it portrays, how it passes the picture of the government of the day, really influences your fate in the next election. They are a powerful section of the society. My hats off to them. and you know what, I've also realized that it really takes a huge lot of effort from the part of the elected leaders to accept things as it is. To say, as long as your conviction, as long as your conscience is clear, as long as what you have done is for the good of the people, whatever media says or people say, you learn to close your eyes and ears. But that doesn't happen always, because we are just human too, end of the day, and it affects. And the sad part is when it starts affecting you to become indifferent, and it might even tempt some leaders to start doing, okay, so what, since I'm always being labeled bad, let me also do some bad. That should not happen. If that happens, then that's the time I think we cannot control many things. But But we are blessed. We are a small society, small country, and our king, His Majesty, is always at the helm of many, stuffs in the country. He is always guiding, in fact, working closely with the government. So that way, much harm is controlled. Otherwise, I don't know. I cannot imagine the the chaos. Thank you, Sugandha.
Thank you, madam, for sharing that, and I can imagine how if it goes wrong, it can go really, really wrong. The way things spread, and the way portrayal could quickly ramp up. It gets shared, and other media sources also kind of take it up. And thank you for sharing that with us, and informing us of some of the risks that media holds. Jena, you have your hand up. Over to you.
Yes, I just wanted to bring up a couple of points on the media question. I definitely agree that training media on how to report on various issues is very important. Very often they don't know how things will affect women. They don't know how things that they say will be, because they're chasing a story. They're chasing, integrity, journalistic integrity. They're also chasing jobs. And so that tends to cloud judgment on how sensational to make something, and what to focus on and what not to focus on. One way to change the game is to train, just as the previous panelist said, the training media on how to report on various issues at all levels. And that includes at rural levels, it includes local levels, local journalists. That's very important. One other, a couple of other points on that. Media engagement is a dance. I think across countries, across cultures, across societies, being useful to them will make them useful to you. Helping them create the narrative, guiding them to stories. And of course, obviously all within ethical parameters, and politics is a game, no matter what, but being useful to them will create relationships, and those relationships are very important in terms of framing narratives. It's something that I think any communications professional would really focus on, is what relationship do you have with the media? And then finally, more women in media at urban and rural levels. That's one way to get at the problem of what they're sensationalizing, what words they're choosing to pay attention to, what provokes them a certain way, and how that then affects, the netizens and the trolling and all of that. More women in media means they'll pick up on different aspects of statements and get at what is being said, what is the advocacy message, and all of that. But I think those are very, very critical ways to engage with the media, because they do, as I think very rightly was pointed out, they are an incredibly powerful institution, both from a perception standpoint, but also from a policy perspective. They can shape policy very quickly.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so in some of our work at Center for Gender and Politics, we'd done a few interviews with men and women in politics, and men as allies, and understanding women's career. And I think one of this particular question around media shaping gender norms, or like media shaping the perception of women as a whole, has been invariably, I think the answer that we have received is similar things that I'm hearing, is like the power it has, and the usage of power, like if you abuse that power, and instead of talking about the policy or the message that the politician is trying to send, if you focus more on the color of their clothing or their marital status and things like that, it could really change the way we look at our leaders, and just very small words or like simple headlines could really impact the viewers and the consumers of that the knowledge. That I wouldn't call it knowledge, let's call it information. Yes, information that's being passed on, and look at women political leaders in a certain way, and probably in worst cases not even capable of making decisions because they're too focused on their dressing or they're too focused on their family. And it's sad to kind of see this happening still, because these are debates that I would have read in like history books or like the history of feminist movements, and it should have been past us, but seems like we still have lots of work left to be done. And with that, I'd move to my last question, and it's around seeing if we have observed any changes in the gender norms, and if we have, we spoke about how we have challenged, and we spoke about how it shaped our opportunities, political opportunities for women, but how I think that this probably could also touch upon the positive aspects of how things have changed. We have a set of young men and women in the room in front of us, hearing all of you. I think we could also have a message if you'd like to share in contributions towards shaping and reshaping and deconstructing, breaking out these norms and changing the way things are, or the way we would like to see in future. I'd leave the kind of mic open to everyone, and please go ahead. Jump.
I can, oh, sorry.
Oh, please go ahead, Madam Hima.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
I can start with that. Thank you, Honorable Ma'am.
Thank you.
Right. I think the youth of today they're very interested in politics. There's no doubt about it. In Nepal's context, there's this, you could see it in the recent election when we had a new party, Nepal Sugandha Party, which is Nepal Independent Party, it's called, and they're all youth leaders. And in fact, two women, they actually won the election. One is from the medical background, one is from the legal background, and they're new to politics. They're new to politics, but they are in the Constitutional Assembly, and which is, of course, they are getting a lot of a criticism for that. The criticism is that they don't have prior knowledge, but then nobody is born with knowledge, But it's such an interesting and very exciting time to see how now these young individuals are going to make a difference in a political platform where these political, we have political leaders who've been in the political mainstream for the past, 50 years, to these young individuals who are in their early 20s, and they're in the same arena right now, and so that's a huge opportunity there. That leads to more and more young people being interested. Now they're looking at, we have another, parliamentarian who's just, who came through the PR, to the reservation seat, and she's already, and this is again a female, and she's created a completely new way of working, how she does her her work, and she's like putting it all in social media, which the age old even politicians who are before my era, and they're still in the political game, they never showed how they were not transparent, they were not accountable. And this young person comes in and she's talking about how she's going to table the bills, or how she's going to talk about it in the house. I mean, these are like, that shows that okay, there's a different way of doing business here. We're serious. And and what I felt is that when we interview young women, young girls for our fellowship, normally, and there's one question that I always ask, and I say, who's your, like, who do you look up to? Or, if there's any young, if there's any, I don't use the word young, not to be an ageist, but I say if there's any, female politicians that you look up to. And normally I get the answer about, someone, a foreign political leader, or, AOC, or, some other leaders. And I rarely hear, in fact, I never hear anyone talk about a Nepali female political leader. And sometimes we get one or two from India, very rare, but two from India. But now I see that is changing. And why? Because that interest of these young individuals in politics, and that sets the tone now. That changes the narrative, and that is something that, it sort of challenges. It challenges and it forces the narrative to change. I mean, we cannot always have this discussion over and over about, this set gender norms. Those norms have to be changed. It has to be challenged, and it will change. And I see that we're struggling, but there's this energy where it's going to happen. It's a long fight, and it's a very critical fight. But youth are definitely challenging that. And I think that I mean, it's just, something that I, because I was supposed to appear in this panel, and I was just going through Twitter, and I use Twitter a lot. And I saw one, remark by one of the Indian politician, and he said, and I found it very funny actually. He said, "Oh, my Twitter followers have decreased from 860 100,000 to now 840 100,000." And I was sitting there going, it matters to you, so how you put your views, who looks at it, who's commenting. And then I was like, but a couple of weeks ago, you're the same politician who's like, commenting about, social media is social media. And I was like, wait a minute, while you sit there and be very complacent and quiet about how narratives are set behind and or for women parliamentarians, while discussions are being talked right in front of you about what kind of sari they're wearing, whether it's cotton or silk or whatever, there you are actually worrying about whether your Twitter followers have gone down or not. Like, you know what I mean? This is very interesting, because, okay, it matters to you. So why don't you change that narrative and come out with, something similar to, even for your colleague who is actually being trolled for wearing, some kind of sunglasses or carrying some kind of bags. I mean, I see a lot happening for women parliamentarians. You could actually change that and maybe have that kind of narrative for the women parliamentarians also. And maybe you can help change that narrative in some way. I mean, I'm just trying to sort of link that to, it was the previous discussion, but my point is that, you talked about having an ally, men, if you're not a feminist, you can at least be a feminist ally, and change that political narrative for women politicians. But it's the youth who can do that, I think. I don't know if I'm clear, but I'm just trying to put everything together because of the time limitation. But I hope I make sense when I'm saying that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think, yeah, there's a lot to learn from. I saw a few nods in the group of students sitting in the room, and I hope they get the message as well. And for others who are listening to this live and would listen eventually the recording. Over to others if they have other comments to make on this.
I'll make it short.
No, please go ahead.
Jena, would you like to go ahead?
I just have a very, very brief point to what Hima was saying. I think the allyship is a very, very critical part of this. We've seen it in places like Afghanistan, which had a lot of issues with that sort of allyship in the past. And so creating, these sorts of relationships, even within activist communities, across different groups, across different genders, across, throughout the gender spectrum. I just wanted to underscore that point. With that will be the thing that changes the situation, where it's not a perception that women only work on women's issues and men are the enemy. That us versus them narrative creates more resistance to equality. And so I just, again, wanted to reinforce that point.
Yeah, so I will also, hello, Sugandha. Could I answer the last
Yes, madam.
question briefly?
Please.
I have seen the gender norms changing quite much, even in our society here in Bhutan, because in the last, local government elections, we have many women local government leaders that have, who were elected. I mean, and much credit goes to also the civil society and NGOs working. One of the very credible ladies, she's always been doing such great job, noble job of encouraging and inspiring women to come forward, Ampun Sok Chodin, because of her organization, BNU's efforts, in the last local government elections. We have out of the, 205 GUPs, we call it, it's like block captains. We have 7. We used to have only 1 in the second local government elections. We have 7 now. Likewise, we have the deputy captain or the Mangmi. We have 22 out of the 205, unlike just, a couple of them or few handful in the second local government election. So things are changing. And we have, even at the highest civil service level, secretaries, we have 4 out of the 20, out of the 10, we have 4, that is 40%. But of course, the secretaries is again nominated by, of course, the prime minister, but the rank, or it's it has to go through His Majesty's also a blessing. So we have 4 out of the 10, and we have many directors now, women directors. So looks like gender norms is changing pretty fast in my society also, and much work goes to civil society organizations like Ampun Soks, I would say. And I think because mine is a very small society, and ours is really, king-loving populace we have. So quite decent, I would say. And until now, I should say, we are blessed that not much of the trolling has happened to women's, dressing style or any other stuff. But of course, this political, vendetta will always be there come elections, around the corner. So, but then singularly, individually, as a woman parliamentarian, I feel blessed that I have not been personally trolled so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think also thank you for taking out the time to share. I would like to thank all the panelists for this inspiring discussion, and I hope it kind of sends us all back with some reflections. We had spoken about starting with gender norms itself and how they affect us. Broadly, I mean, in political leadership, but also broadly like society. Also about how we have challenged, or we have seen these things being challenged, communication being a very important aspect, and not just public communication, but even interpersonal communication, and being more assertive, and followed by also, I think, allyship and understanding the importance of allyship and inspiring the men, I'd say young men, and I hope like others and our senior generation also kind of, we have seen some allies, I wouldn't deny that, and we have done some interviews with some men allies, and hope we see it across generations, across careers and occupations. And with that, I'd like to quickly check in the room if there is any question, and we could
Hear me? Sugandha,
conclude.
can you hear me?
Hi,
Am I
yes,
Yes, we have one question in the room.
all right.
Hello.
Hello,
How are
hi.
you? Yeah. So my name is Prashant and I'm from Kautilya School of Public Policy. So I don't have any as such a question, but we were talking about media and gender. So I just want to add one point. When we are talking about gender in the aspect of media, like we know there are some specific responsibility of media which contains education, entertainment, and information, and through that we are saying that media can shape the general opinion about the society and all. But in India, if you'll see, there are lots of missing identities itself in Indian mainstream media, which includes gender also. 23%, only 23% women are in the Indian mainstream media, and those 23% women belongs to a certain upper caste. Even in that, those upper caste women works on only desk or on the screen. So that kind of a problem is there. That 23% cannot decide which news or which thing should go on live or through their channel. So that problem is there. So there are many intersections. The first intervention should be to break that or intervene that ecosystem, to understand the ecosystem of that problem, which includes the identity of that individual, because that does matter. Not like out of a 1.4 billion people, not a single Dalit or Adivasi woman has a leadership position or ownership position in any kind of a Indian mainstream media house. So that's the problem there.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think I just quickly comment on that, since it wasn't a question. So I try to wrap up quickly as well. But I think rightly pointed out, and it takes me back to Jena's point on like having more, like I think the numbers and like bringing and reaching that representation in all aspects, of course, and media being one, political leadership being something that we'd been focusing on, and I think definitely like taking care of the intersectionality. It's not mere tokenism. We've also spoken about tokenism and not just like having a few faces as a checklist that we tick off, saying that we have achieved gender equality, but thinking about intersections is very important as well. Thank you for bringing that up. And with that, I wish you all happy International Women's Day. I hope we all have something to go back home to and think and reflect and hopefully try to shatter and challenge some of the gender norms wherever you see it, observe it, or even experience it. And good luck with that. I think we can wrap up. Thanks very much again to the panelists who have made the time to come and share their thoughts with us. Thank you all the participants who have joined us, and thank you for sharing your comments.